Hello and welcome to another video of the Reloadly gift card series. My name is Junaid Maqsood, and in this video we're going to be looking into the transactions endpoint of the Reloadly gift card API and how we can retrieve the transactions and the details of the existing orders via the API. We will also see how the webhook works and how we can use that to receive events from the Reloadly server into our application and track the order process that way as well. So let's get right into it. So right now I'm on the Reloadly gift card API reference page. So here we have two endpoints, one for retrieving all the transactions. So that endpoint is /reports/transactions. So whatever the base URL is based on your application environment. If you're on production, it would be giftcards.reloadly.com. If you're on sandbox, it would be giftcards-sandbox.reloadly.com and then the API endpoint. So this endpoint is paginated, so we can send size, page, custom identifier, start date and end date in the query parameter, and the response will be based on those parameters. And in the response, we're getting an array of all the orders that are within that criteria that we have defined. We also have another endpoint for getting the transaction by ID. So if we have the transaction ID of the Reloadly gift card that we've purchased, then we can directly use this endpoint /report/transaction/the transaction ID that we received from the order request. And in the response, we'll get the exact details of the order that we've processed on the Reloadly API. So if you have not followed along the series, I will highly suggest watching all the videos in detail so that you understand where we are currently at. In the last video, we saw how we can create the order, and there we retrieve the transaction ID from the orders endpoint from the Reloadly, and now we can use that to get all the details of that order or get all the existing orders that we've sent on the Reloadly server. So let's switch to Postman and we'll see how the API endpoints work in there, and then we'll also switch to the application and see how the transactions look like and how we can code that in to sync up all the transactions in our own database as well. And in the end, we'll also check out a special topic, that's webhook, how that works, how we can configure a webhook in the Reloadly dashboard, and what basically webhooks are for. So right now I'm on Postman. I'm currently on the sandbox environment. So you can see that the request is going to giftcards-sandbox.reloadly.com, and I'll just add in the endpoint. So we have reports/transactions. I've already added in the authorization token for my sandbox environment. So let's see if we send the request, what do we get? So we get a successful response, and we get a content array and a pageable object. You might be familiar with this format as we've already seen this in the products endpoint. So it's quite similar to that one. So we get the number of elements that we receive, the total size, and we can play with the size as well. We can specify what the size should be in the params. So basically what that means is how many items in one page do we want to get from the API. So right now I will see that in our sandbox environment on this account, I only have 2 transactions. So I'm able to retrieve the details of each transaction. So I have the transaction ID and all the other details of that order that I've conducted. And in case I want to fetch just for a particular order, I can copy the transaction ID, and then there's the other endpoint. So /transactions/the transaction ID. If I send the GET request to that, I get the exact detail of that particular order if it exists in the database. So now that we've seen how the API endpoints work on Postman, let me quickly switch to the project that we were building, and we'll integrate the transactions endpoint and sync up all the existing orders in our own MongoDB instance as well. Okay, so now I'm back on the project so that we were building. So what I've done here is, in the orders model that we currently had, I've added a new function to sync transactions from the API. And what that basically does is it makes the request to the Reloadly API, and based on the transactions, it gets all the transactions, and then it checks if we have that order in our MongoDB instance via the custom identifier. So we discussed this in the last video, what the custom identifier was and how much important that was. So we were using that in our application. So based on that, if we get the same order for the same custom identifier, we're updating. Otherwise, we are creating a new instance in our database. Also, the project, how we structured it in previous videos, we had a cron job. And in that cron job, we were syncing all the details like the categories, the countries, the brands, the products from the Reloadly API. And now we're also syncing the transactions. So it's using that same request. and it's creating a cron job for syncing all the transactions into our database. Also in our server.js file, this is the file that loads up when we start the application. I've also added the same sync transactions from reports. So when the app starts now, we will also sync all the transactions in our database. So let's see that in action. We can go to our MongoDB instance. Right now we do have orders. We were playing with it in the last video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this collection. And I'm going to go back to our code editor and I'm going to run the application. So what will happen in on start, it will start the sync process. So it will sync the countries, the categories, the brands, the products, and then in the end it will sync all the existing orders that we have on the Reloadly API. So let's give it a few seconds to sync up everything. So now that it says the transaction sync complete, total transaction sync were 2, let's confirm that in our database. Let's see if we have that collection created. So we do have orders collection, and if we go into the orders collection, we see the 2 entities created here. So we have all the details for these 2 products orders synced in. So great, that part is working. So the next thing I want to talk about is the webhook. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I already have the webhook enabled. I want to show you the process, so I'm going to switch the environment. So let me just go on the dashboard. So we go to the developers portal. Here we saw how we can retrieve the API keys, and you'll see there is a section for webhooks. So let's click on that. And when the first time you come to webhooks, you have to enable them. This tells the Reloadly system that your application supports webhook and they will start sending in the events. So basically, what are webhooks? Webhooks are a way for the Reloadly server to communicate directly with your application. What they do is whenever an event occurs, so for example, you created an order, but that order was in a pending state, or you're awaiting confirmation from something, because sometimes the order can take some time. So instead of polling the server again and again to checking the response and seeing if you've received the transaction or not, what will happen is you will enable the webhooks and you'll create an endpoint for the webhook. And the Reloadly system, when they've completed the transaction, they'll send a request to that webhook and inform you that this order has been completed. So let's enable the webhook. So once you've enabled the webhook, you will have the API client secret. This is very important. This is the secret that they've created so that you can verify that the request that is coming into your system is actually coming from the webhook or not. There is also a complete documentation for the webhook. So if we go to the developers documentation, here under developer tools, we will see webhook and we'll see the complete overview. So currently they have the airtime. So if you create a transaction for the airtime, once that order status changes, they'll send you a request, an event on the webhook, and this have the same information for the gift card. So once you create a transaction for the gift card, if the status of that card changes, they'll send you an event. So they have complete details on what the use cases could be for the webhook and how you can use them. And they completely define the process to create multiple webhooks if you need to. So for example, if you have an application that's only responsible for the airtime, you can create a webhook endpoint for that specifically. And if you want to split the gift card from it, you can create a separate endpoint for that one as well. So let's go through that process as well. So first of all, we'll need to add an endpoint. So in order to add the endpoint, you'll first need to verify that you're the owner of the account. So they'll send you an one-time verification code on your email. So let me just check that. Now that I have the code, let me just paste that in. And we are greeted with the add webhook form. They also give you sample codes for how your webhook should verify the secret and respond accordingly. So first of all, we need the API endpoint. So what I've done is, in the same project that we were building, I've created an API endpoint. So if I go into the routes and API, we have this /webhook endpoint. So that webhook code is already, I've coded in. It's quite simple. It's getting a post request, and we've saved the signing secret for the account in our env file, and we also have the whitelisted IP, so we can check for that. And once we're through with all the verification, we get the body from the JSON. So it's a post request, so you'll get a body parameter, and we can retrieve all the data from the raw body. We convert it to payload string, and then we stringify it to JSON. So we convert the string to JSON because Reloadly server will be sending the JSON request. And then we verify the signature based on the secret that we've retrieved from the settings. I'll show you that secret in a bit as well. And what I'm doing here is I'm simply finding the order based on the ID, the custom identifier. And if we have that order, I'm adding the webhook event to that one as well. I also added a new table in our database for webhook events, and we're also creating an event for that, so that in case we receive an event that we've not matched, we can it's sort of a logs that I've created there for it. So we fetch the custom identifier from the event. If that custom identifier exists, then we get the order from the custom identifier. If that order does exist, then we're updating the order based on what the information we've received from the webhook event. So in order, as webhooks are indented for server to server communication, and currently I'm running the system, the application on my system, what I've done is I've used a tool called ngrok. So if you're not familiar with it, ngrok basically allows you to tunnel your local application to gateway URL. So they create an URL for you, and you can use that in basically testing environment. So you don't really need to do this part when you're deploying. So here you will enter the exact URL for that post request what you've created once it's deployed on the server. So let me just find the ngrok URL, and we can put that in there for testing environment. So this is the base URL, and then the endpoint for our system is /API/webhook. And then here you define which service you're using for this application. So currently we're doing gift card, and then you choose which events you want to receive on this endpoint. So we want to receive the gift card transaction status. So we click next. So now that we have created our webhook, so the URL is here, and we see that it's enabled. We can disable it if we want to, or edit any detail. We can also view sample code. So they also provide you with different language sample codes for how you can use the webhook. So it's basic example. You just need a post request, and you need to verify the authenticity by using either whitelisting their IPs or also using the secret that they have shared here. It's the API client secret, and you verify the authenticity of the request that you receive. So in order to get this API client secret, we click on copy, and it will again give you the verification code. We'll receive that on email, and once we've pasted in the code, we can view the client secret and copy it. So I've already done that part. So let me just switch to our application, and if I go into the env file, what I've done is I've added in the signing secret that I've received from the dashboard that I just showed you, the API secret. So this secret is different from the client secret that we were using to make the API calls, right? We should not confuse that secret with this one. This is for the webhook authenticity, and that one is for the API calls that we were using. So right now all this information is for the sandbox environment. So I've created the webhook and added the client ID, client secret for the sandbox environment, also the signing secret, webhook, and the IPs that I've received from the while creating the webhook endpoint. So right now everything should be plugged in, and it should be working properly. So let me just switch to Firefox, and we can test that webhook as well. So I already created the webhook events table, but I'm going to remove that because I want to show you how that looks like. And right now we had two orders that we created. Let's just create another order. I will send the request via our API. So this is our endpoint. In the last video, we showed you this one as well. So I'm just going to create a same order again. So now I've created that order. We have the custom identifier here. Let me just copy this so that we can search on our database. So let's find, we would have 3 objects here now. So we have 3, and we can find with the custom identifier the one that we just created. So this is the order that we just created, and we already received the event. So if we go back to our application, you'll see I have these logs here. So what happened here is we created the order, and then we received the webhook event from the Reloadly API. and all the information for the webhook event, and then we found the order for that custom identifier because this was the custom identifier that we generated for when we created the order, and Reloadly also provided us with that custom identifier when they send us the event data. So we found the event and we've added the data on the database for the webhook event. So we can confirm that in our orders table we have that webhook event that we just received, and we have all the information here. We can also see that if we refresh, we would have the new webhook events table, and here we would have also received that event. So we received the event type was gift card underscore transaction dot status. So that is the one that we enabled on the Reloadly API. And in the event data, we had the ID, type, live mode, date, and then the data. And in the data, we had all the transaction information. So if you want to see the whole structure, if we go back into the documentation and go in webhook events, we also see the data that the Reloadly server sends the request with. So this is the JSON payload. They have the example for the airtime transaction, but the structure is quite similar when we're comparing that with the gift card API. So they also give you return a success status. So this is very important. So once you've received the webhook, you've done all the processing, you have to respond back with a 200 status score. That is the success status. If you do not respond back with a 200 OK message, then the server will keep sending in the request again and again. So that is very important. So if I go back into the code, you'll see that in the webhook endpoint, at the very last end, once we've done all the processing, we're returning the status 200. It doesn't really matter what you send in the response, you just need to send the status 200 in the response body. So that was it, guys, for this video. It's very important to see the transactions, because when you're creating an application, there are many scenarios you might want to create some reconciliation reports or study what the user pattern is on your system. So it's very important to sync up this information. And webhooks are a great way to do this, so that you can receive live events without having to repull the Reloadly API again and again to check the status of the order. So that wraps up the episode 7 of the Reloadly gift card series. In the next video, we'll see some cool products that you can use to showcase on your system, and we'll also continue building your full production ready workflow. And I'll also show how the front end of the application part looks like. Currently, we were just working on the back end. So I'll quickly create a simple front end to show you how all the APIs that we created, how the backend service that we created all comes together, and how you can create something similar for your needs. So see you in the next one.